Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Raise the Vibe with Liz. I'm your host, Liz Peterson, and today I am interviewing Renu Mehta Cheng all about spiritual awakening. Super excited about this conversation. A little bit about Renu first, though. She is a highly regarded spiritual teacher and energy healer with a profound understanding of the ascension process. With years of experience in the field, Renu has dedicated her life to helping individuals achieve holistic well being and personal growth. Renu's journey began with her own personal transformation, which ignited a deep passion for exploring the realms of spirituality and energy healing. Through extensive training and continuous learning, she has developed a unique approach that combines ancient wisdom with modern techniques. As a spiritual teacher, Renu guides her students on a transformative path through the spiritual waking process, empowering them to tap into their inner wisdom and discover their true potential. Renu, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Liz.
So great to host you. First, I love to ask all of my guests, what was your journey up into this moment and what you're doing right now?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Do you mean from the start, from my
Yeah.
spiritual awakening journey, or?
Yes, let's hear about that.
Okay. Well, my first lesson that I learned on my spiritual awakening path was when I was in preschool. And
Like,
it's really funny as I continue to talk more and more about my journey, I keep getting downloads of my youth, of times when I don't remember. And I remember sitting in preschool and having this moment of realizing that I really did want love and wanted
mm,
to find and feel loved. And it was something that as a child I had no concept of. But looking back and seeing this lesson being dropped into my lap of, Renu, you really want to find, you really want to appreciate what love is and feel love within your own life. And I don't think it's more of relationship love, it's more of unconditional love. That
mm.
was the first thing that came in when I was 3. And that was the start of it, I think.
Wow. How did that continue on through your childhood and into your adult years?
For me, my childhood was beautiful. I have a great family, and it was a really there was a lot of learning lessons for me. For example, I had a lot of lessons that came to me very early on about my own self-image, about my own self-love, and I think that correlates with that first lesson of, finding that love and feeling that unconditional love. It really resonated with me, but more deeply as to I need to love myself. So I think that's really what happened in my formative years, the first maybe 15 years. And
Hmm.
then I had a couple spiritual awakening moments. And then when I was 17, I really did come into my own. So it took me all those years to realize, oh, it's not about anybody else, it's about me. Ooh,
Mm,
motorcycle.
nice. Didn't even hear
Oh, perfect.
it. Definitely. What do you mean for our audience when you say I had a spiritual awakening?
So for me, well, what spiritual awakening is, if I may explain,
Please.
in my experience or in my feeling, my thoughts, excuse me, are it's really a moment in your life when you say to yourself, this moment has to change. This life that I'm living, something has to change. I'm not happy with it for whatever reason it is. And it could be something as simple as in adult lives, jobs or relationships or locations or friendships or ways of living. If you're having an issue with substance abuse or alcohol or abuse in general or whatever it is, it's a
Mhm.
moment when you realize, holy cow, I can't keep doing this life the way that I'm doing it. So for me, it was this revelation of, I think my first moment was when I was 10, after getting that first lesson of saying, oh my gosh, I really have to recognize who I am and start to love myself. And that started it again. And then in middle school, I had that revelation again. And then by the time I was 17, I knew who I was and I had contended and learned the lessons of why I was here in this physical body with this physical body and this physical face. And I faced all those moments of low self esteem and body image and all of that. So that was my spiritual awakening moment.
Thank you for sharing that. Funny, I was listening to Ram Dass last week. Let's
Mm,
see, Talks and Sounds True put out his book, um, Knowing or Becoming Nobody, I guess is what I
mm,
was listening to. I swear I could have tea with Ram Dass and talk for hours. I love his work now. And
mm,
he said something about spiritual awakening, was my point, where he said spiritual awakening is really gaining a new perspective. What do you
mm.
think about that point of view?
I think that's hitting the nail on the head.
Mm-hmm.
I, I tend to talk about the fact that I think spiritual awakening, the word, those words can be really powerful. And also, people tend to think about that journey of the spiritual awakening journey from our youths. You know, when they look at those blockbuster movies of somebody having this midlife crisis and then saying, okay, I gotta go, I gotta leave everything, drop everything, move out east, and then come back in this Buddhic garb and live a totally different Zen life, right? And I think in this moment in time, it's even more poignant to say that it's not that world that the movies have predict or per what's the word shown us, but
Yeah.
it's really about what you're saying, which is this perspective, this shift, this change, and really getting into the nitty gritty of what you want in your life and to work towards it with healing, with releasing, with transmuting energies. So there's just so many different avenues to do it to get to that point of that new perspective.
I think a lot of people are awakening right now, aka gaining a new perspective of life and kind
Mm-hmm.
of reconfiguring their lives. But a lot of people don't
Mm,
know what's going on. The first wave I saw coming in 2018, and then
mm,
recently started getting intuition around the second wave coming now. So, what can people do to like acknowledge, like, okay, that sounds like I'm having a spiritual awakening? Like, what are the stages that you discuss, Renu, about around spiritual awakening?
Well, I don't really hone in on the stages because I find that people start to get nervous and anxious about the stages,
Mhm.
thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not there, or oh gosh, am I in this stage or am I in that stage? So I think it's more of, and it's really not linear per se. It doesn't go through one, two, three, four, five. And I've noticed, I think
Right.
it's more about, I'm in this moment. I want to remedy what I want to remedy. Let me first address this issue. So if it's someone in a relationship and
Mhm.
they're realizing that they do love that person, but they don't think that they're jiving anymore, then it's addressing maybe what's at the root of that. If it's something that maybe it's that they're feeling with, or there's a feeling towards their spouse, and then really getting to the root of that to see if this relationship can go forward and what needs to be healed and cleared and released in that relationship. Does that make sense?
It does make sense because it shows that, you know, life is always moving and changing, right? And we're transforming all the time. And if we're
Mhm,
transforming all the time, then our environment is transforming all the time.
mhm,
And sometimes relationships have to go into a transformative phase where, you know, we either make different agreements
mhm,
or, you know, we see that it's come to an end and we move on. And I think it's, one of the parts about, at least my experience has been, for navigating all of those transformations was
mhm,
part of, you know, my awakening, as
mhm,
you know, a lot of people like to call it, or gaining a new perspective in life. But I definitely see, I like to call them initiations too,
mm,
like,
mm.
you know, a house fire or a relationship breaking
Yeah.
up or the birth of a new child or something like that.
Right.
You know, those all awaken us to different perspectives and different priorities and awaken us to a new way of being.
Yes. Very well put. And very, it's such a beautiful sentiment because if you didn't get to that moment, you would still continue to be living the life that you lived. and perhaps those emotions would have maintained and stayed. So, and it's very brave and it's very courageous to face what you're contending with. And
Mhm.
that's a hard thing to do in the moment. But once the first step is always recognition and realizing, okay, I'm not happy with this. And then it becomes a little bit easier. But that's the hardest step, is to realize for some
Mhm.
people.
Yeah, that realizing. I said on my website, awareness is everything because without
Hmm.
awareness, we can't change, right? Because we don't know what we need to
Right.
change. So let's
Right.
talk about that, like being blocked. What are some of the things that can keep us blocked from entering into, these new perceptions in our lives?
Blocks, gosh, energetic blocks. They could be through your chakra system. They could be from this life. They could be stemming from past lives or concurrent bleed through lives. Blocks are really wonderful things to work through and to heal and transmute and clear. And they look very different for each person. I've seen blocks just in the physical energetic field for some people. I've seen it go from the physical to the emotional, into the mental, even into the spiritual. So it really is so unique. And I think specifically, it depends on the issue or the lesson that you're learning, that we're being shown that we have to really delve deep to see what exactly that block is.
Nice. Yes, it's true. During energy, you're an energy worker like myself,
Mhm.
and we do really have to dive deeper into, the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual
Mhm.
layers to really figure out what the root cause of those blocks are. You
Right.
said something a few minutes ago, bleed through lives. And I want
Mhm.
to kind of tap on that a little bit because that's a new term for me. So discuss a little bit, what's that difference between that past life that you mentioned and the bleed through lives? That's fun.
Yeah, it's a very interesting concept, but I always think of it like a book. So if you have a book and you open it up, you can see my hands.
Mhm.
What's on the first page, that life is happening. But if you turn pages to maybe page 85, that life is also happening. And sometimes, if there is a block that's coming from one lifetime, it can be so big that it connects to another life. So, the life that's happening on page one could be also affecting page 85 and vice versa. So, if you have, for example, let me think. I had a client who had a situation, had a very traumatic death in one of their lives. And it was something, I think it was a drowning. And so that happened in a bleed through concurrent life, where in this life, she has a fear of water,
Mhm.
a very, very big, strong fear of water. And she can go in the water, but she can only go up to a certain depth, because then she gets very anxious and afraid. And so that block, that traumatic experience that happened in that one life, is affecting her in this life. So that's what I mean with that bleed through life. It could
Mhm.
happen in one life that's simultaneously happening in this life.
Right. For our listeners out there who are like, oh my gosh, I think that's happening to me. What
Yeah.
do you offer for tips and tools to be able to deal with those bleed throughs if people are recognizing them after you said that?
Energetic work, tapping is excellent, journal writing. You can see a healer, a Reiki master, an energy healer, a Akashic record consultant. You can do some work with people to help you find the root of it and really address it.
You work
Because,
with,
Mhm.
go ahead.
Oh, no, no, go ahead, please.
You work with the Akashic records.
Mhm.
So what are some of the things that you see? And for those listeners who don't know what Akashic Records Reader is, can you please explain that?
Sure. The Akashic records, in my view, when I go in, I say a prayer and I'm welcomed into a library, which basically holds that soul's life, all the lives they've ever lived, from the inception of the soul until this life. So I have access to all of that. And we were talking about the energetic block
Mhm.
or the traumatic experience. I can go back and find the root, the origin of where that was, and work with that client to heal and clear and release anything and everything associated with that so that they can live this life without that fear, without that debilitating, anxious feeling, so that they can really just live and be fully and freely.
Yeah, what are the benefits of,
Yeah.
being able to dive deep into the Akashic records and remove some of these blocks and kind of navigate our spiritual awakening? What are the benefits to this realization that that's happening in our lives?
Oh my gosh, how long is your show? I mean, there's so many benefits. I mean, it doesn't have to be just with the Akashic records, just energy healing. We come down, our souls come down to this earth plane to really live life fully and freely. And we bring down these lessons because our soul wants to heal these lessons. We want to learn, we want to grow, and then we want to be able to not have that debilitating fear of every time you look at the water or whatever it is, all those anxieties or those limiting beliefs, which are those thought patterns and programs in your mind that keep running, that are telling you you're not good enough, or
Mhm.
whatever it is associated with. We're meant to live here and really appreciate life, the highs and the lows, right? Because life is not perfect. And so to be truly present and to experience all that is coming to us with grace and unconditional love and peace and harmony. And it's not going to mean that there will not be those the caves or the caverns we have to go through,
Mhm.
and those mountains we have to climb. It's just that we can be fully present, because that's true. The only thing that really truly exists is this moment in time, you and I
Mhm.
here having this conversation live, this moment that's ticking forward. That's the only thing that really truly exists.
Mhm. Yes, well said. That being said, I want to kind of dip more into your story too, so our listeners get a real personal view of you. What were some of
Mhm.
the things, and obstacles that you had to overcome, and how did you do that? What were the tools that you use to overcome, the obstacles that you had in your life?
Well, I had a lot of, I would say, self image issues when I was younger. And I think that ties in with the self love.
Mhm.
And for me, I did a lot of journaling, which I did a lot of automatic writing, which is you take your pen to paper and you allow your pen to just go and flow. And whatever comes out is coming out from the depths of your soul, your higher self coming down to help you on working and healing and clearing the issue at hand. And for me, that was really powerful because things I would write things and then look and reread it and say, "Oh my gosh, I don't even remember thinking that." It was just coming out, and it would be really powerful for me because it would bring up something that I was feeling in the depths and help me to release it and acknowledge it in a way that I didn't have that perspective about before. And so I think journaling is a great tool. That was one of the things I used. And then also I started working and doing more holistic therapies as a physical therapist. I would do a lot more work in the holistic realm with Reiki, with cranial sacral therapy, eventually doing energy work and the Akashic records. And in the last, I want to say 5 years, I've completely transformed my own physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies just by really delving in and doing the work and really, peeling away the layers like one after the other, really getting into the depths of it to help me be the best version of myself that I could be in this moment in time.
Nice. That's beautiful. Sounds like a beautiful journey and a hard journey too, because sometimes when we're
Mhm.
unpeeling all of those layers, it's not easy. I
Mm-mm.
do like life is hard right now, and I'm hearing from a lot of people, oh, there's a lot going on the outside.
Mhm.
All of my
Yeah,
highly sensitive people, my clients are really feeling it right now. Like,
right.
what are some benefits that, from the work that you do or some of the practices that you do that help people, really stay calm and centered in their life when there's a lot of turmoil going on in the outside world?
That's a great question because it's true. There's so much happening on the earth at this time. So, one of the biggest things that I do is I protect my energetic field every day, and I ask for the highest timeline for myself and for my loved ones. And now I've been doing in the last couple of weeks for the globe, for the earth, the highest timeline for everyone on the planet to be able to perceive it and live it. So that has been the newest thing I've added to my routine is asking for the highest timeline for all living souls on the earth. But the protecting your energetic field is really important because there's so much positivity in the world, but also
Mhm.
so much negativity, right? And I don't really like to take that in because it's very easy to get your energetic system bogged down. And every day to then purge that is very exhausting. So I protect my energetic field and I protect the ones of my loved ones and of family members and friends and even countries
Yeah.
and continents as well. I try to do my best every day, which is separate from the timeline.
Hmm.
So,
I like that you brought up the timeline, that highest timeline too. I literally have on my phone all the time my affirmation, I
mm,
am aligned to the highest timeline. I think it's so
mm,
important to be thinking that way and setting intentions for our lives,
mm-hmm,
to be always at choice, to be choosing
right.
how we want to live, what I want my life to look like, what
Mm-hmm,
I would love to happen in the world, you know.
yeah,
I think that's
yeah.
important. And that protection is really important too. I found that recently I've actually had to up my game as far as
Mm,
like protecting myself and, kind of reaching out to loved ones and kind of putting a little energetic bubble around my children
sure.
and other loved ones in the family. Yeah, that's so important to point out that not only do we have to have that awareness, but we have to take those steps to, protect ourselves from it.
Right.
What's a simple exercise that our listeners can do to just create that, safety and sacred space around themselves, Renu?
Well, Liz, one thing that's really simple that I have a lot of my clients do is they put their hands on their heart center, their heart chakra, and they just do deep breathing. And I know it sounds really simple, but they inhale for maybe 4 or 5 seconds. And then I encourage them to exhale for about 5, 6, or 7 seconds. So inhale for a shorter duration than the exhalation. And it really calms them down. It works on that central nervous system, works on the vagal nerve, which is the largest running nerve in the body, and it helps them to calm their whole system. That's the most simplest thing to do, but one of the most powerfulest because we were not meant to live in fight or flight. And it's very easy to say that, but our lives can be stressful. I got to go to do this and I got to go do that. And this meeting is there and this is thing. And the dinner is burning on the stove and I got to go pick up my kid. And there's a fire next door. There's a lot of heightened stuff happening. So if we can control and calm our bodies, we can address all these things with that calm perspective and still handle all of it well, but without that anxiety and that stress and that overwhelm. That is the most important and simplest thing to do. So I would say breathing and breath work.
Mm, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Breath work is really grounding. I agree. I
Yeah.
second that for
Yeah.
sure. For people who, let's see, for people who are like, gosh, this is sounding really familiar. I feel like I'm on a spiritual awakening. I've had a house fire, or I've gone through a divorce, or I've lost someone close to me. What are some things
Mm.
that you can offer to be able to navigate that? Because it's really like it's the soul's journey, right? We're
Mm.
here to
Mm.
learn, and go through these lessons and be part of this evolvement of consciousness. So, what are some things, can you talk about that healing journey and some things that our listeners could do to like learn and heal from their experiences?
Well, may I share my free gift?
Yes, please.
I do have a spiritual awakening kit, which has tools and techniques to help you on your spiritual awakening path with meditations and instructions that truthfully I do every day. I'm just sharing my own routine with the world, but they really do ground me. They really do help me get into a mindset to be able to face anything and everything that's happened or
Mhm,
happening. And that's the beautiful part about life. There are those good moments and there are those hard moments. There are those sad moments. There are those moments of elation. And it's to be able to feel all of that. It's such a blessing to be here. And it can be really hard to be here. I acknowledge that.
mhm,
And I think it's about grounding and finding your own presence and then being able to truly be here, as I said before, and face what's coming up with that calm nature. And it's hard, and not hard, but it's work to get to that place.
mhm,
And the start of that work is, as you said, awareness of what we want to work on first, because
mhm.
it's a journey. It's a layer upon layer. It's some every lesson that we have to learn, we want to address. And then they say that when you're done learning all the lessons in this life, you get to cross over. So I
Yeah, what
think,
does that mean for the soul? Let's talk a little bit about the soul and its journey and what that means for the soul.
well, for me, what I've seen, my family, we've lost a lot of family members in the last 3 years, a good amount, at
I'm
least.
sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. So I've been contending with it a lot over the years. And for me, I'm able to see them cross to the other side and be welcomed with open arms from their loved ones. And it's so beautiful and powerful for me because they are home, right? They are back in the most perfect being. They're not really physical beings, but the
Mhm,
perception that I'm being shown is that they're in their physical forms. They're younger, they're vibrant, they're jovial. And the best way I can describe it is they are home. And it just is this feeling of utmost peace and unconditional love. I have not experienced it. I've been shown it and
mhm,
I've had a moment of that feeling, but I've obviously not crossed over. But that feeling is really so powerful for me to see them in their light. So the harder part for that is to be on this side because we miss them.
mhm,
And we want to be, we want their memories and we want them with us and we want to be able to hold their hands. And I'm always, whenever I say that out loud, one of my loved ones will come in and will say, we're still with you. We're always supporting you and we're right here. And I can feel one of my uncles, his head is right here. But they are with us at all times. And it's a beautiful thing. But for them, they get to go back to that beautiful place and see
mhm,
what lessons that they worked on, see where they need more work, see if they're going to come back to the earth realm. Maybe they stay there, they're due other jobs. It's hard to know because everyone's soul path is very unique and different. And maybe some of them will choose to come back, maybe they won't. But when the spiritual awakening process and the vibration of the earth really rose in the last maybe 10, 15 years, we knew that there was going to be a mass exodus of souls, which is,
mhm,
and as I sit here with you, on the earth, it's hard. It's hard to hear that and to say that out loud. But as I'm looking in the last so many years of what's been happening, you can see it. And
Yeah.
I don't feel sad because I know that they're happy and they're okay and they're home. So I'm just sad that I don't get to be with those people every day.
Yeah. I feel that too. It's really the missing of that physical presence
Hmm.
and the navigating of the emotions that go along with the loss, what that
Yeah.
may have looked like. And it still doesn't, knowing that my mom is on the other side and that
Mm.
she's happy and at peace and communicating with me and showing up in dreams,
Hmm.
and, sending me signs and symbols, it's comforting. But on the other hand, we still have to navigate our emotions.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
For people who are, who've experienced the losses in their families and, they're navigating that emotions right now, what advice would you give those listeners?
First and foremost, I would say honor your feelings. If you're having a moment of sadness, feel it and allow the tears to flow if there are tears, and if those tears turn into ugly crying, do it, own
Mhm.
it. Because when you don't honor your feelings and acknowledge them, that energy gets stagnant in your body. And we don't really want to hold that within ourselves. So, number one, honor your feelings. And if you're missing them, I recommend sometimes to some of my clients, and I myself have done it, where I write a letter to my loved one and I tell them all the things that I want to say that I didn't get to say before they
Mhm.
crossed over, and tell them how much I love them, how much I miss them. For someone who has a relationship where they wanted to work through something, write it out, put it out into the universe. So, I wish we worked on A, B, C, D, E, and F. And then hopefully they will feel better with that, but also then burning that and putting it out into the universe so that that doesn't stay within them and it just goes out into the world. That's something really powerful, but also really cathartic, because when someone crosses over and some people may not be aware that their family member or friend is sending them messages. It's so wonderful, Liz, that you get messages from your mom. That's so beautiful. So for those that don't have that, writing that letter out might be their way of, communicating and maybe opening up that door.
Mm. I love that. That's a great exercise. What if, they're sitting there and they're like, oh, I want to write a letter,
Mhm.
to my loved one about my emotions and how I'm feeling right now. What do you say to those people out there? Because I found that after someone in our lives pass away, there's always those shoulda, coulda, wouldas,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So,
Hmm.
how do we navigate those, beside the fact that we're mourning and missing our loved one?
I think you need to take the time first to honor the feelings and get them all out and go through the stages of grief.
Mhm.
And when you are ready to write out the shoulda, coulda, woulda, you can do that. That's one. You can also, when you're ready, you can have a conversation with your loved one. And it sounds, for some people, maybe this is new, but you can just call on to them and ask the universe to please bring their presence close to you, and then have a conversation that way. And they might get a sign, or maybe when a family member that's crossed over, one of the signs that I've seen are little white feathers. They're very unique. They don't look like goose down feathers. They're just white feathers that might show up in your home or wherever you're walking. You might see that, and that's the sign that an angel was with you, that one of your loved ones were with you. So having that conversation and just putting it out there into the universe can be very powerful, because you can, even if you're aware or not aware if they're listening or not, you yourself are aware that you're putting it out there.
Mhm.
And you're saying, I wish I did this. I wish that I improved on this, or I wish you did this for me. And the souls go back to learn the lessons that they need to learn. And that soul, if there was a conflict in the relationship, that soul will be contending with it on their side. And then when you join them and cross over, you might be presented with an opportunity to have that communication over there.
I
So
love that
it's,
you pointed that out too, because it does continue on the other side,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
anything, that the loved one, even if you had, some conflict with them, they're
right.
going to continue. And plus,
Yeah,
there's not the attachment to the emotion like we have on this side. They're looking
right.
back and saying, oh, I could have done better, or I'm sorry, or I love you, or I wish
Mhm.
I, had made a different choice in, the life when I was living it with you. And it's nice I'm glad that you also pointed out, that having a conversation with your loved one, because that still is possible. There's an
Mhm.
exercise that I work with my clients around, which is aspecting, where you just have, call their soul into the chair
Mhm.
across from you
Yeah.
and have that
Mhm.
conversation that you needed to have with them. And,
Right.
when you really start getting into it, you can hear your loved one,
Mhm.
replying back. You might think, oh, this is what I wish that they would say. But,
Right.
if you surrender to the process, and really let yourself become vulnerable in the situation or in the conversation, I mean, it can really take you to deep places. Do you have some exercises for our listeners to, besides automatic writing, or maybe writing them a letter or having a conversation that might benefit them in a positive way?
Well, I first I want to say that I think that's wonderful that that's what you do with your clients. I think that's such a powerful opportunity for them to get that closure and that healing that they need. And I think it's just so wonderful to do. I think for my experience, having being in the Akashic realm and being in the records, also, like you said, calling in their higher self or that soul to come in and work together, that's really the best way for me that I've experienced it as well. So I think that is beyond I think the person has to really look for someone to help them with that.
Mhm.
Because that's getting muddling into some energies that if they're not familiar with, I wouldn't want them to tap into. I think when you want to communicate with your loved one in a way that having a conversation, I would say find someone that you trust and know, or that someone's recommended to do that. But just speaking out into the universe, getting it off your chest, getting it out there into the world is great.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Um, let's take it now from the souls of our loved ones who have passed on.
Mm,
We've talked a little bit about the soul and the healing journey, and I want to
mhm.
kind of bring it around to that. And what if someone doesn't have that awareness that we were talking about? What if they're like, oh, just like, what do I do? Like,
Yeah.
I'm having all these things happen in my life, and they don't know what's going on.
Sorry, there's the garage.
Here, we're good.
Oh, you
We're
don't hear it?
right.
Oh, good. Whew.
Yeah.
My children are home.
Nice.
Um, I'm sorry. Please repeat that because that distracted me.
Oh, what can we do, that human part of ourselves that doesn't know what's going on? What do we do with that part of ourselves?
That's a great question because it's a so distracting for me. I'm sorry. I'm hearing my little children's pitter patter on the floor. Um, it's there are a lot of great books out there. Um, I think one of them is, oh gosh, I'm not remembering. He's a psychiatrist, Many Masters, Many Lives. I'm
Hmm.
probably saying that wrong. That was a
Is that
great
Mike
introduction.
Dooley?
I can't remember. Is a physician. I don't remember, but he was a psychiatrist and he had a lot of patient. He had one patient that he did go back into her past lives to help her work on some healing. But that's a nice way to introduce that kind of world of that esoteric world, right? Um, there are some great books of mediums communicating with family members from the other side. I think
Mm.
if you're not familiar with it, reading up on it or watching NDE videos, which is near death experience videos. There's so many out there of people that have expressed what they've gone through when they've crossed over for a brief time and then came back. Um, because it is a very foreign concept for some people.
Hmm.
And if you're not in the world, it is strange. I mean, I remember when I started looking into this, years ago and saying, wait, what? Wait, we have past life. Wait, what? With the first time it really hit to me,
Hmm.
it was so foreign and strange. But now, fast forward to me sitting here, I'm thinking, yeah, Liz and I were talking about it's like an everyday conversation, right?
I know,
Um,
I love that.
yeah, it's really cool. And it's really beautiful that there's more awareness of it and people are
Hmm.
talking about it so freely and openly. That's just so exciting.
Hmm.
Um, I actually remember being young and being introduced to a game called Past Lives, where it was a board game about past lives and reincarnation. And I thought that was so cool. So, getting back to that point of the family member crossing over, when you do get to them or if you do communicate with them, we all have these soul contracts that
Hmm.
we write up before we come down when we come down into the earth plane, which talks about the relationship that we have and what we wanted to work on together and what lessons you would learn, what lessons I would learn, and then how we would grow together. So you could always talk about that with your loved one or when you're learning about all of this, you can read up about soul contracts and things like that as well. I don't
Hmm.
know if that was off topic. Sorry. I just thought about
That's
that.
okay. Remember, I always set an intention, whatever needs to be channeled through for the highest and best good be channeled through. So
Good.
someone out there
Perfect.
must have needed to hear it. It's perfect the way it is the way I
Mm,
feel about recording. Yeah. I know that one of the ways that we can have a spiritual awakening is, what people have termed the dark night of the soul. So if somebody's
mm,
going through a dark night,
mm.
explain what that is and how it is part of the awakening process.
The dark night of the soul is for me, I don't really that's a term I don't really use as much because I think it's just that moment of realizing, okay, I got to really address what I need to address. And then the actual delving in of the lesson for
Mhm.
whatever the issue you're working on. That process can be, it's different for every person. And for some people, addressing each, unpacking the layers and unpacking what is happening in that lesson. If it's, let me give an example because that's kind of vague. If someone
Mhm.
is an alcoholic, for example, and they come to the revelation or the moment of saying, I can't do this anymore, I've got to change, then that starts that process. And when they work through getting the help and then going through those hardships and going through that really tough work, and hopefully they're talking with a therapist or getting outside help because that's a
Mhm.
addiction is a very big soul lesson that needs guidance and help because it's some souls can really do it if they're very strong, but it's a tough one.
Yeah.
Um, if they can get that help and then communicating with someone and then just peeling away the layers of it, that could be considered a dark night of the soul, that time frame. I think it's just the process of really delving in and looking at the lessons and really looking at what you need to learn and heal and grow and clear and release.
Mhm.
And it's a journey. And
Yeah.
there's no judgment with that journey, I think.
No, I don't think so either. Although we can go into a lot of self-judgment, of
Yes.
ourselves,
Hmm.
right? Um, oh, I just had a question. It's just so I was just thinking, you were saying about the dark night of the soul and the spiritual journey, and how do we recognize because I have this philosophy of everything is a lesson for me, but those
Mm.
out there who don't, how can they look at a situation and suss out what the lesson is of the experience in the experience?
So it's so funny. I had a client, um, she had a huge argument with her spouse.
Hmm.
And it, instead of, she could have totally been angry and been like, why is this happening? And blah, 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 right? But after the argument, she took a moment after and she walked away. She said, you know what? We need some space between each other. And she walked away. And she took the time to hear what he was saying in her mind. She thought about it. And she told me after the fact that she was so grateful for that argument. And I was so curious to hear what her response was because I wanted to hear it from her. And she said, because I needed to have that argument with him. I needed to know what was happening so that I could really look within me and see where I needed to work on. But more than that, she said, we had to have that argument. We needed to address this issue in the way that it was being addressed, whatever the problem was, and then move forward and get past it. And that was really powerful for her because she didn't look at it as, oh, another fight and oh gosh, and he does this and he does that. She looked at it as, you know what? There was a reason why we had this fight.
Mhm.
And this reason is bringing us to the next step. So in the moment, it's not easy. It's harder because you have to stop and you have to calm yourself and you have to listen to the situation.
Mhm.
But after the fact, you can say, oh, okay, well, I just had an argument with somebody. What was that about? And then maybe say, okay, well, where do I have to work on? I know what they have to work on. We always know what they have to work on, right? A, B, C, D, E, F. But what do I have to work on?
Mhm.
And just taking any situation and really reflecting on what really happened.
Mhm.
Was it really that you got the flat tire? Or was it that perhaps you really need to be a little bit more present when you're driving and not really daydream so much or get caught up in those perceptive thoughts of negativity or whatever it is, right? So
Mhm.
there's always that lesson of something there. Or that lesson could have been, oh my gosh, you were saved. You got that flat tire before you hit the curb and something, else could have happened, right? So there's always, then we get into timeline talk and highest timeline but there is always a lesson. The great experiences and the not so great experiences.
Mhm.
So I think
I
it's great
love
you do.
how she saw it like we needed to have this argument because a lot of
Hmm.
people, they are avoidant. They avoid
Right.
conflict. And I think it's these hard discussions that we have that take our relationships to the next level. And it's
Yeah.
awesome when we're blessed with a healthy communicator and you're able to go to the deeper places. It's even more of a blessing when you've got somebody who also looks for the lesson, who's, also compassionate to your wounds or belief systems or something like that and can navigate and have these hard
Yeah.
discussions in
Yeah.
this open vulnerable way. I think it's really a blessing. I really see a lot of people stepping more into
Mm,
sacred relationship now and be able to
mm.
have those hard conversations without them spiraling out.
Yeah. I mean, it's very easy to spiral out. It's the harder part is to really reflect and stop in the moment. And it takes practice.
Mhm. Yeah,
It really
yeah, it
does.
does, but you can do it.
Hmm.
So anybody out there who's experiencing that, it's hard to do, but once you get there, I think once you get into the practice, it's not that hard,
Mm, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's like finding those seeds too, like before that seed is allowed to sprout,
Hmm.
between whether it's a friend or a loved one or a partner, approaching
Hmm.
that before it grows out of control. Because once it grows out of control, a huge divide can set in.
Then you're getting the weed whacker and
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's
I
true.
love that. Getting the weed whacker out for
I was thinking
real.
machete, because sometimes you're right. It can, avoidance is really easy to do, and you
Mhm.
think it's the better way. But, and I have to admit, I was an avoider. I was saying, I'm not going to talk about that because I'm not going to bring this up because it's,
Mhm.
it's status quo, but it brings up more problems in the long run.
Yeah,
And
it
so,
does. And we
right?
were trained to, when we were younger, to avoid conflict and not have those hard conversations. I know I didn't have any good example, of what that looked like. So there was definitely some learning that I had to go through for my life, in my life to get to a point where
Yeah.
I am now for sure.
Yeah.
You were talking about higher timeline because I think we are discussing that right now, right? Choosing the higher timeline,
Yeah.
choosing, awakened conversation or mature conversation or conscious conversation or whatever you want to call it. That
Mm.
is, or sacred relationship. It's choosing the higher timeline. What's the highest and best for me? And then that creating a higher outcome. So talk a little bit about, these timelines because it's come up a couple times. So I think it's something that we should discuss, before we run out of our hour-long conversation time.
Well, I want to say that when I first heard about the timelines, I remember being just blown away and saying, "You mean the Doctor Strange? That's real?" The image of the movie, the timelines, and it really blew my mind. And ever since, the timelines that I've been experiencing are really exciting. But anybody can command into the universe their highest timeline daily. So the earth realm, when you command something in this realm, it's like pushing a button on your computer. You're telling the universe to do what you want it to do. So if you command something, then it has to be done. So you can say every morning after you do your morning routine, you can say, I now command that I'm operating on my highest timeline today. Or I now command to activate my highest timeline and make conscious choices. So that's something so simple, but yet so powerful. And you can actually feel a shift in your being if you do it every day and you really still your body and really become very present. It's something you can do just to command it. And for simplicity's sake, when you talk about timelines, there's low timeline, middle timeline, and high timeline. And the high timeline is pretty hard to achieve. I think it's very few souls get there. And we typically are on the lower timeline. So when you ask for that higher timeline, you can get activated and get elevated up to the higher timeline, the middle. I mean, in reality, there's millions of timelines, right? Every decision that you make, the opposite that what you're not going to do. If I'm going to make a left at the traffic light, there's a timeline where you made a right or when you went straight, right? I mean, I don't want to blow people's minds, but it blew my mind. There's so many millions of timelines out there. But for simplicity's sake, we go one, two, three, low, middle, and high. So you just want to ask and command into the universe, set me on the highest timeline, and you'll be elevated. It's as simple as that. And you'll find the difference when you're on a lower timeline. Some people might find that, you know, bad things are happening or just, the lull and drawl of life, right? But when you
Mhm.
ask for a higher timeline, you command it, you might find that things do work out, right?
Yeah.
Things do go your way. So it's as simple as that. It's actually
Yeah.
really, really simple, but beautiful and powerful.
I like that you pointed out, like in some other timeline, you went left or went
Yeah.
straight. And, it's a really sweet, basic, view of, okay, right now I am making just this choice for myself, whatever it may be,
Right.
just using the stop sign as symbology. Like, I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to go right in this situation instead of going left. And
Right.
it brings it back to choice. Like, we have
Mm-hmm.
choice in our lives. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's so important, especially like with spiritual awakening and gaining perspective. Like, what am I going to choose for myself? If I want, the world to look a certain way, then I have to be that myself. That is a choice for me. And then
Mm-hmm.
that ripples out. Maybe I'm setting an example for my children, and then they'll make choices, based on what's in their highest and best
Right.
for them. And then eventually, possibly one day we'll have it worldwide where everybody's choosing that higher timeline, and
Yeah.
choosing that right or left turn, whichever happens to be in the highest best, that our brains
Mm-hmm.
think are the highest and best for us or the world. Because, really there's that other perception where we really don't know what's going on. So something that we might perceive as being, horrible or bad or not the
Right.
person we want, you know, could be the perfect thing that the world needs in order to change. Who
Yeah.
knows?
No, yes,
Or at least like point out, the worst case scenario so we can change to a higher timeline, right?
right. And I think it's uh, I think what you pointed out, Liz, was so great is that as we, if you're a parent or you're someone in a position of authority or younger ones looking up to you, you can really say, I'm going to choose this so that I am a model for the younger generation
Yeah.
and to show them that there is that positivity, that there is something higher and better that you can choose. And it's something you can control, right? Our on
Yeah.
this earth realm, we all want to we feel like we can control anything, and like you said, there's we can't control any, all of this, but that's something you can put out there and you can see the difference of. So, yeah, really cool.
Yeah. Nice. I love that you pointed out that role model, and then the ripples go out,
Mhm.
and that's what we want. We want that ripple effect.
Truth
Renu,
is, oh, sorry.
what's that?
I was just going to say,
Go
truth
ahead.
is the only person we can control is ourselves. So that's why, that role model component. So you're right.
Yes. So true. We can only control ourselves. Yeah.
Hmm.
That is a jewel of wisdom right there. But I'm going to continue to ask you the question because I ask all of my guests, what is a jewel of wisdom that you would like to leave our listeners with today?
Jewel of wisdom. I love the word jewel. So beautiful. Um, Gosh, that no matter what, you are loved, you are supported, and you are being guided every day. And to just stop and feel the love within you, no matter where you are in your life and where you are on your soul path, that love is always around you all the time and always will be there no matter what. You're a
Beautiful.
good soul, no good or bad, but you're always loved.
I love that. Thank you, Rainey. That was beautiful. And how
Oh,
can
thank
people
you.
find you and to work with you?
Well, they can look at my meditation, my spiritual awakening kit, and they can find my information through there.
Great. And
Oh,
you're at
ooh.
embracetherapy.com, correct?
Well, actually, my website is getting revamped, but I do have a YouTube page where I put out weekly videos of tools and techniques on our spiritual awakening path. So that's another way.
And what
And
is your YouTube channel called?
spiritual awakening to heal.
Spiritual Awakening to Heal. Oh, I love that.
Oh,
And then
thank
your
you.
free gift, I'll have that link in the show notes, is
Hmm.
spiritualawakeningkit.com. And I'll have that in the show
Great.
notes for you right now and for all of
Wonderful.
our
Thank
listeners.
you.
Right now, it's been
Thank
such a
you.
pleasure to host you. Thank you so much for being on Raise the Vibe with Liz.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And thank you everyone for listening. Again, I'm Liz Peterson, and this is Raise the Vibe with Liz. And you can find me everywhere and on social media at Raise the Vibe with Liz and raisethevibewithliz.com. Thank you everyone for joining us. And remember to get out there and raise the vibe. Have a great day.
Mhm.
Bye, everybody.